I'm Nisha Garing.
And I'm Doug Jessup. Welcome to Family Heritage Stories, where we help people understand where they came from. Things like traditions, values, and culture.
How were those stories passed down from generation to generation? Through words, through deeds, through stories.
Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other.
And these stories deserve to be passed down. It is time for Family Heritage Stories.
We all benefit from heroes among us. Now, they're going to say, it's just part of the job. But it's more than that. It's time for Hero Salute Stories. Now, Ted, I have to admit, we've chatted before, but I've never been able to meet you. So number one, thank you so much for coming out here. I have to admit the group of gentlemen that you are part of are kind of rock stars to me. And so tell me about this vest and this hat that you're wearing.
Oh, the hat is for the Dustoff mission that we flew in Vietnam. And the mission itself was picking up the wounded soldiers on the battlefield amidst the incoming fire and all the tactical maneuverings going on, and get those guys back to the hospital, preferably within the what they call the golden hour. They have figured that if a person who is injured or wounded can get to the hospital within an hour, they have a very strong chance of survival. I think last time I heard it was somewhere between 90 and 97%.
Wow.
I could be entirely wrong about that.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a question that I already know the answer to, but for everybody out there. So what kind of guns did you have on your helicopter?
I carried a 38. Most of the time it was not loaded.
But how about the helicopter itself?
None.
Zero. Okay. I mean, not to sound funky, but why in the world would you go into a battle zone with no protection, no guns?
Well, I think, and I don't really know the answer to the question, but I think it has something to do with the Geneva Convention and the shall we say, the rules of war.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it better, quite frankly, because although I have served 30 months in Vietnam, I have never had to point a weapon at somebody and pull the trigger.
Wow. So how did you get involved in the Vietnam War?
I was serving in Hawaii with the 25th Infantry Division as a artillery fire direction and non-commissioned officer in charge of the office or the section. And in 1965, one of the brigades, I think it was 3rd Brigade of the 25th Division, moved to Pleiku area. And in May of 1966, the rest of the division followed and went to the Cu Chi Tay Ninh area, just a little bit northwest of Saigon. So I spent 18 months there. The first, about the first 6 months was as a forward observer for the artillery, and I was working with the Special Forces A team in a little town called Godaha. And I could tell you a couple of stories about those fellows if you're...
Yeah, let's hear some.
Well, first of all, has the statute of limitations passed?
Probably. We can always cut this out if we have to. You know?
No, you don't have to. That one day the A-team sergeant came and said, need to go to Saigon, or Long Bien, rather. You want to go along? I said, sure. And I realized halfway down there that the only way he could get there was with my Jeep and my driver. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked him, what are we going down for? He says, I need to pick up a generator. Well, we were in a Jeep, and there were 3 of us, and some radios. I'm not quite sure whether this is going to be a very small generator. I don't even have a trailer. But we went down there into the depot, the supply depot, was driving up, and he stopped by a 50 kW generator on a tandem axle. And I don't know what's going on because he ain't pulling that with my Jeep.
Yeah, that's a
I
big
know.
one. Yeah.
So he calls in, picks up the radio, calls a friend in with a Chinook. And
Really?
yeah,
It's like,
and
okay, hey,
comes
yeah.
in, picks it up. He gets it about 20 feet off the ground or so. And this guy comes running out of the guard shack and he says, what the hell do you think you're doing? And the sergeant says, well, I was told to get this generator and bring it down here and drop it off. You got paperwork? I ain't got no paperwork. I'm Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you take that generator and get the hell out of here. And don't you ever come back without paperwork.
So yeah, so he appropriated said merchandise.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Well, did you have to go back in your Jeep, or did you get to ride in the Chinook?
The Chinook never landed, so we rode back in the Jeep.
Yeah, okay. So talking about helicopters, though, how in the world? Okay, again, we're talking Dustoff is helicopter pilots and medics. What was it like the first time you got into a helicopter as a pilot?
Solo or with an instructor?
You tell me.
Well, the instructor got out of the aircraft and said, okay, take it around the plan, the traffic pattern, 3 times. And so I very shakily went out, made my turn, my mid-base, or my coming down the left side, around to the final, and very gently set it down. But my head was going like 1,000 miles an hour. How do I do this? What happens if this? What's that sound? So that's about what it was like. It was very, very, the tediosity was at a very high level.
Yeah.
And the adrenaline was flowing at the same time. And the only thing that had changed was that I knew I would not get a pink slip that day. So if I was good enough to fly it around 3 times without crashing and killing myself, well, I didn't get a pink slip.
Okay, there you go. And so where was your first assignment as a helicopter pilot?
In Vietnam.
Okay, no, I mean, where in Vietnam?
Oh, well, first I got there on the plane, and for some reason, the Repo Depot reporting depot sent me up to Cu Chi and Tay Nam. But I think now that I remember it better, it's because I had been 30 months in that area, and I had asked for it.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot too.
Okay, now you're a helicopter pilot. Were you part of Dustoff yet, or?
No, that was part of Dustoff because I had gone through the AMED course at Fort Sam Houston.
Gotcha. Okay, now explain to people, from what I understand, Dustoff was not really, for lack of a better term, an assignment as much as you had to say, hi, I volunteer. Is that, I mean, how close to correct is that?
Well, for all others, it's probably very correct. For me, it was, why not? And I will explain that by saying, I knew, of course, what Dustoff was because I'd been there 30 months ahead. But when I got out of flight school, after I graduated, they asked me where I wanted to go. Well, I wasn't married. I didn't have any family responsibilities. And I said, what are my options? Well, you can go to Hunter Stewart and fly guns. You can go straight to Vietnam and fly ash and trash. You can do this. You can do that. You can even go to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And I said, isn't that where they train the nurses? And he said, yes. I said, I'll take San Antonio.
Okay, well, yeah. Okay, you're a red-blooded American. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
So I took my 4-week course there, and I learned, it was a 4-week course on how to be a doctor.
Oh.
And I learned that if you promise them a helicopter ride, they'll follow you anywhere. So that was nice.
Well, I have to admit, I've interviewed a couple nurses, and the one thing is that they felt safer around the helicopter pilots, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, I think it's great.
Yeah, well, I guess. Yeah. But now I'm going to get into some stuff that is a little bit more sensitive.
Okay.
Do you remember, and this is, I asked the same question to the rest of your brothers, okay? Do you remember the first mission you did as a dust-off pilot?
Yes. The first mission. We flew out to some place somewhere, and we picked up a dog and a monkey. And it seemed that the monkey had bitten the dog, and the dog handler wanted to take it back to the vet. And so we did.
Totally serious?
Yeah, I'm totally serious.
Wow. Okay, now I do know that that Milkman had a little dog that was a mascot. It was not the same dog, was it?
No.
Okay, just checking. Okay, now let's get, so that's the one where, it almost feels like that should be in a blooper reel because it's like, you got to be kidding. But let's talk the first memorable human patients that you picked up, okay?
I'd have to think on that one.
Or just one, or a mission that you remember that means something.
Oh, yes, I remember plenty of those. Some of them funny and some of them not so funny. Let me tell you a funny one.
Okay.
It was dark 30, meaning somewhere in the middle of the night. I was first up. I was aircraft commander on this one. And Bill Hill was my co-pilot, flew out in the middle of the darkness, and I got within range, and I attacked my regular call. I said, Brown 20, this is Dustoff 150. What's your artillery and tactical situation, please? I'm about 05 out of your location. And the answer came back, this is Brown 20. Quiet, secure. And I said, okay. I said, if everything's quiet and secure, why are we whispering? And he says, we don't want to give away our position. So at that point, Bill Hill clicked the mic and said, Riot, he says, you think this big ass helicopter ain't gonna do that for you?
Oh, man.
So.
Yeah, well, okay. Now, there are some names on your jacket, on your vest there. And Jim Beeson and I went. There is a miniature version of the Vietnam Veteran Wall that is outside of Hill Air Force Base. And Jim and I found the names of those guys on that wall. And there's one in particular that stood out to all of you Dustoff guys that I've interviewed. Can you tell me about Doug McNeil?
Doug McNeil was a great pilot. I mean, when you speak of technical proficiency, it's right up there with that particular name. He was also an excellent officer. First lieutenant, he drove his men, but not without reason. He demanded and got the results that he wanted. Is what he demanded, and he also got the respect of the people who worked with him and around him. On this particular day, he and I were flying a 10-in standby. And when we went in, do you want to hear the whole story?
Yes, I do, please.
Okay. So we refueled after getting a call that the action was at the Straight Edge Woods. And this was, I'll tell you the date in a little bit, although you probably already know it. But at the Straight Edge Woods, and we refueled we'd just gotten on another mission, and we're sitting at POL refueling and got this call. So we went out and we circled the area. And we circled it, listening to the guns work out, listening to the calls on the radio. The ground unit was on Fox mic. The guns were on VHF. And we were monitoring Fox mic, VHF, and UHF, which is the guard frequency.
Right.
So we were circling over here, and Doug said, had made up his decision, and he said, Dustoff 6-3 going in from northwest to southeast, whatever the azimuth was, and he came in low and fast. The last transmission out of the cockpit to the other units was Dustoff 6-3 moving in. And then the last transmission inside the cockpit was, does anyone see the ground unit? I said, 12 o'clock close. And Doug put it into a maneuver for the aircraft to put it into a side flare and at the same time pull up on the collective, which if he had been in level flight would have taken us to rise. In this case, pulled us this way, which was his way of stopping. You might call it an air brake. And then his normal tactic was to sit down like that, pick up the ground people or the wounded, and go out again. In this particular situation, when he was like that, the enemy opened up on us, and he was killed instantly, around through the chest. Well, I was also hit at the same time. I got a round through the left calf, which also went into my right thigh. And both of my feet were blown off of the pedals. And when Doug died, he collapsed to his left side with the controls in his hands, where he just kind of pulled everything down with him, and we just hit the ground. I unbuckled. I turned off the fuel, the battery, and everything I could think of, and crawled back into the back of the aircraft looking for something to help me get out of there. I know that the crew chief and the medic at that point in time were gone. I learned later that the crew chief had gotten hit as he was coming out of the aircraft. But I was low. They knew where we were. A lot of withering fire. I didn't want to get out that way. I wanted to go out through the chin bubble or the regular. And I was looking for something to break out the window. And a previous patient had inadvertently left an M79 grenade launcher on the aircraft. No ammunition, which is probably okay, because I might have tried to shoot it anyway. So I turned it around and tried to break out the window. You can't break a plexiglass window with a rubber butt plate on an M79 grenade launcher. It doesn't work. And about that time, the medic came back. And he low crawled back to the position, picked up a piece of the wreckage, and knocked it out. And I crawled out and I said, let's get Mac's body out. He says, no, we don't have time. So that meant to me at the time that either a ground unit was about to charge or there was another aircraft sitting there waiting for me. And the longer he sat there, the more higher the danger he was in. So I low crawled back to the waiting helicopter, and it was not exactly the Army method of low crawling, whatever I could do to get to that helicopter. And went out, flew out to they took us to the hospital, they breathed the wound, and the medic came back the next day. And he said, I said, when we knocked out the window, I asked to get Mac's buyout. You said there wasn't time. What was happening back there? I said, I kind of figured out it was a helicopter waiting. He said, no, it was the flames. And I said, what flames? He said, the back of the aircraft was completely in flames. Didn't you see it? And no, I didn't. I'm convinced that if I had seen it, I'd probably panicked. And my brain knew that and shut down temporarily to keep me, fill my body with adrenaline, and keep me moving in a survival mode. And when I read the book, or rather, but Kathy and I read the book about the women in Vietnam, not Lou Eisenbrand's, but the other one. I cannot remember the author right now. Yeah. But in there, she said that she remembered that everything was quiet. And I recall also that all the firing had stopped and there was nothing else going on in the world except my being in that helicopter, looking for a way to get out of it. And I'm impressed with that little bit of what the brain can do for you. And he got great.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. Were you able to recover Doug's body later?
No, burned in the fire.
So I know that you and your brothers went on a honor flight together.
Oh, Brother Jim, Navy, Ticonderoga.
So what was it like going on an honor flight?
Well, it was great to have all the camaraderie that we had and the if you'll pardon the expression, the pretty girls around all the place. It was kind of nice. It really was.
Mm-hmm.
Until, even the overnight didn't bother us when the plane didn't quite work to our specifications.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and it was fatiguing. It was tiring, but everything was great until we got to that mail call. And after that, it was an emotional roller coaster. I mean, up and down. I couldn't believe. I've never been that emotional before. Maybe a few times since, thinking about it, but wow. When I came back from Nam, both times, both the my 30-month or my 18-month and my 12-month tours, I went back and joined a military unit because I was still in the military and I was making it a career. So I had no problem interfacing with the local civilian communities. They all liked the way their budgets were arranged. Mm-hmm. So they had no complaints on what the military had done over there, at least not enough to do any damage to me. But I understand that we weren't really welcomed back.
What did you do after, career-wise and such, after coming home from Vietnam?
Career-wise, I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, and was in a three-quarter cav flying Hueys and watching guys repel out of the ship on ropes instead of trying to bring them into the ship on a hoist.
Yeah.
It was a change. And I did that for a couple of years and then went to Germany and flew with the 63rd Medical Detachment. And at that time, the 159th had gone to Darmstadt, Germany. Uh-huh. And I was down in Landstuhl close to Ramstein Air Force Base.
Yep.
And flew for them. It was a very interesting experience, a very great experience as far as an aviator, because you had all kinds of different weather. You had a lot more of the clouds and rain and the IFR flying and the ICAO standards. And
So did you fly helicopters for the majority of your career?
for the 11 years, so I think it's the majority. I was 9 years in the artillery, so
Was there much of a difference technology of the helicopters that you started flying versus the helicopters that you were flying at the end of your career?
the helicopter I started flying first was the training helicopter, and it's just a 2 or 3 seater. It was a Fairchild Hiller OH-23. You know what the OH stands for?
Tell me.
Observation helicopter.
Okay.
And the Huey UH-1 utility helicopter. But anyway, after that, I was all Hueys. No, I'll take that back. I flew some OH-58, observation helicopter 58, the Kiowa, in the CAV unit that I was with. In Germany, I flew the Hueys and came back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and for a retirement assignment, and flew Huey's right at the end. I'm not sure, but I think I saw a Black Hawk on the ground somewhere. And I did fly with the Quad A people a 4-bladed OH-58, which was new to me and so much easier to control and maneuver. Oh,
Well, yes, I've been in some of the bigger helicopters, and oh yeah, it's a little interesting fun.
Yeah.
But now you've got a lot of patches, and we've talked about Doug and the Purple Heart. But there's one right here, Congressional Gold Medal.
oh yeah.
I have to admit, here's the thing that, and this is editorializing, I admit it, okay? I have to admit that I was kind of surprised that not one unit had ever received the Congressional Gold Medal that served in Vietnam until you guys. What does that Congressional Gold Medal mean to you?
It means a lot. It stands for what we did over there. So I consider it my legacy to the world. And the reason I did it was because after 18 months walking around the jungles, not only did I wanted to fly, but I also wanted to help those guys down there because I knew they needed the help. A lot of them were not there by choice. I was. So I had the opportunity to help. And as I indicated earlier, it was a non-combatant situation for me. I liked that. Everything boiled down to my ability to help and my desire to work with them were all reflected in there, as well as because of the people we picked up, including civilians and pregnant mama sons, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's the humanitarian aspect of it. And I think that is what has really got the votes.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me explain. I'm going to point to the camera on this one, okay? Just so you know. So it's been my honor to interview 9. You're the 9th Dustoff pilot that I've interviewed. And what people don't realize is that every single one of you guys did over 1,000 missions, okay? Every single one of you guys saved over 3,000 lives. I look at the ripple factor because the other thing that's interesting is, okay, and I have to admit, I'm going to use my favorite quote of all the groups. It's from Don Cavaney, okay? He said, the difference between First Cav and Dustoff, they had the guns, Dustoff had the balls. Okay. I'm just going, that is such a great soundbite. I'm just saying, sorry. But the reality is that you guys picked up anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I had no idea that I knew you'd picked up dogs, but I had no idea about the monkeys, just saying. Okay. But, but the thing is, it's interesting. I was talking to one of the guys when you guys were at the wall, and a comment was made, and I don't know if you even realize what you guys have done. There are a large number of names on that wall. But, I'm going, okay, I have interviewed 9 guys, and I'm not good at math, but 9 times 3,000 is a pretty damn big number.
Yeah.
And you look at the number of people that you've saved, and if you guys had not been there, a lot more names would be on that wall.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your service.
I appreciate you saying that. I'll give you a response that Randy gave to me. You were worth it.
Yep. Hey, Milkman. Thanks for the hat. Well, Tad, here's the deal. And I admit I get a little emotional about you guys because having come from a military family, you guys have done some pretty incredible things in basically hell. And so I consider you guys my big brothers. I used to wear Army shirts in the 70s, thinking about you guys. And I'm going to make you the same promise that I made to my buddy Jim that's over there. You will not be forgotten. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you for listening.
With another entry into Family Heritage Stories with a true American hero, Ted Howard. I'm Doug Jessel. If stories aren't passed down from generation to generation, they're lost, and those people are forgotten. It is our mission to help heroes be remembered. With another episode of Family Heritage Stories, I'm Doug Jessel.
I'm General Max Stitzer.
Good night.